Good morning. This morning I want to talk a little bit about Michel Foucault, in particular chapters from his book Discipline and Punish that he wrote in 1977, and also how that relates to, or how I believe there is some relationship between his commentary and the political graffiti of Banksy. The irony of this situation that I'm in right now recording doesn't escape me. Number one, obviously, I'm very uncomfortable in this situation, recording myself. Very uncomfortable just with this kind of technology. And also, am noticing that because I have no clue what the normative behaviour is in this kind of an assignment, I'm uncomfortable, nervous, and then the further irony being that as I'm going to have to upload this to YouTube, I'm putting myself in the position of being the observed, the seen, the person under the ever enduring watchful gaze of the observer, the invisible person who can look at the minutiae of my behaviours and how I look and how I sound and all of my gestures. And it's really nerve-wracking, and also is a really clear lesson in how desperate we can be to behave normally. Anyway, probably best if I just start to read, or I will procrastinate and waffle on. Chapters from Discipline and Punish by Michel Foucault raise many issues relating to power and knowledge in society, but it is the rhetoric regarding surveillance and discipline that resonates with the depth and colour that is captured in the analogous world of street artist Banksy that provides a fascinating visual parallel, well, in my opinion anyway. Not only does the graffiti appear to epitomise Foucauldian philosophy, but the artist, Banksy, as he is situated in a society that decries the defacing of public property, is both visible and invisible. He's a philosopher and a political commentator, but he's also a vandal. He produces valuable capital assets in terms of his work. He's anonymous, and yet he is so famous. Banksy challenges normative behaviour both in his visual commentary and his apparently illegal mode of delivery that most or many would call vandalism, whilst at the same time embracing the power of being the unseen observer, the faceless gaze, and using that power to persuade and convince other individuals to modify their behaviours and to question the power of authority and the power of surveillance. So yet another irony, Banksy, who decries the powerful and who criticises the state and authority, is himself embracing the exact same power of observation. So then I have to ask the question, is Banksy powerful or powerless? And then even further, the other issue around normative behaviours or norms, is Banksy's work art or is it not? And art, of course, there are many arguments and many debates about what is and isn't art. And obviously from the millions of dollars that people have spent trying to acquire pieces of Banksy's work, there are many, many people who believe that his work is indeed art. And the fact that it appreciates in value probably supports that view, or definitely supports it. Whilst Banksy creates and then abandons his work in public places, his pieces have become extremely valuable, as I just said, and many are actually protected. This dichotomy between the norm prohibiting the defacement of public property and the intrinsic value of an artwork by the mysterious Banksy immediately confronts what is acceptable behaviour and what is illegal behaviour. Notoriety and credibility of his political messages have attracted a following and a respect that threatens to undermine some of the very foundations of a stable society. And with regard to this, other graffiti artists are prosecuted, punished for being graffiti artists, for making their art or their comment. And yet Banksy is lauded and almost painted in gold and put on a pedestal by many people. So there is a real hypocrisy there. Foucault would have to appreciate, well, I think he'd have to if he was alive, Banksy's commitment to the pursuit of individual freedom, the freedom to question authority and to publicise issues that he sees as being ethical and political and important, whilst at the same time employing the framework of Bentham's panopticon. And by that I mean he is deriving power from being invisible. He's painting his stencils publicly, but seemingly unobserved, and he's sending an unequivocal message to all individuals who are exposed to his work. It is, for me, the ultimate in panopticon theory. Even though there's no architectural structure, Banksy is the unseen seer. His messages appear or can appear in any location, at any time, and anywhere in the world, in much the same way that the observer may appear, may watch or may not watch at any time. The question as to whether Banksy's behaviour inculcates a climate of change in the behaviour of others is difficult to ascertain, but certainly the appreciating value of his work encourages both private and public individuals to protect and preserve it, thus ensuring the longevity of his messages and the continuing debate regarding his political statements. So the question there is Banksy modifying other people's behaviour by being the unseen observer? And if he is modifying their behaviour, is he making changes to the norm? I would have to suggest that the very fact that his artwork is becoming so acceptable and sought after even, that he certainly is changing norms in the respect of art. Whether he's changing norms in terms of the way society behaviours, I'm not so sure. That would need a lot more research. More specifically, one of his earliest pieces of artwork, done in 2004, I'll hold it up and see if it's visible. What are you looking at? It's stenciled obviously next to a security camera, and it raised the issue of the number of TV cameras in the UK and the idea of a nation under surveillance. The same article discusses whether his painting is art or vandalism and makes the statement, maybe the truth has been hidden in plain sight. Again, the irony of Banksy. It draws the reader to examine their own personal dogmas of societal norms that define art, and further their attitudes and opinions regarding mass surveillance. Similar themes, including security cameras, can be found in other examples of Banksy's artistic renderings, including a chimpanzee balancing around a pole, painted beneath a camera and holding a clapperboard, insinuating we are all being filmed all the time. Then there's the girl, excuse me, looking up at a stem only to see the flower is in fact a camera. And then even more explicitly, there is a huge depiction of a boy on a ladder painting One Nation on CCTV whilst being photographed by a policeman and a dog. Banksy has also been credited with creating an artwork in 2014 that does not vaguely allude to any political or philosophical perspective. It is very clear. It's a picture of a telephone box with three 1950s agents, and they're all tapping the phone box, tapping into the conversations of citizens. So it's a very forceful portrayal of the state surveillance of citizens. The strength of that image, and I'm sorry I don't have it to show you, epitomises the power of authority to monitor the weak, the unseen, at any time and with significant resources bestowed upon them by the state. As in the other illustrations, the continuing and enduring presence of the proliferation of cameras in people's everyday lives becomes normalised, and individuals are correspondingly coerced into normative behaviours, ever fearful that if they step out of line they are being watched and recorded and will be held accountable for deviating from the acceptable behaviour norms. So is Banksy becoming the commentator? Are we accepting his views as the norm? I still don't know. The analogy in the writing of Foucault with the political activism of Banksy's images is clearly enshrined in the stencil that was revealed on a wall in Gaza. The illustration shows several children on chair swings. They're suspended from an Israeli watchtower. I think that resembles the central observation tower in Bentham's Panopticon, complete with the windows and the camera, but unable to observe the fairground antics of the children as they swing beneath, rendering the observers and the watchtower cameras incapable of monitoring the children's behaviour. The unrelenting gaze is not omnipotent after all in this depiction, and the children are actually free, they're liberated, they're able to enjoy their freedom in that moment, and the observer is powerless to prevent it. So that raises another question. Are there times when the powerful do not see what is actually going on around them? Certainly Banksy is publicly acclaiming his personal political views, but the message from a Foucauldian perspective is clear. The watchtower signifies that ever-watchful gaze of the powerful and the powerlessness of those being observed. Control is maintained by the ever-present possibility of being watched and monitored. Citizens are coerced into compliance and become self-monitoring. Thus, discipline is generally maintained, and the powerful maintain the strength of their position over the weaknesses of the docile.